Hello, insiders, and welcome to another Wednesday edition of Facebook Live. Happy Wednesday, veterans, and thank you for spending some time with us today. Before we get started with today's topic, let's get a little sound off in the comments. Let us know where you're turning in from and what branch you served in. All right, and while you're doing that, we'll call some people out, tell them hello. With me today is VCM Donnie Witten, and I am Coach Daryl. Donnie, you want to go down and just tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, brother. Thanks for the intro. Always happy to be here with you. I'm a United States Army combat veteran. I was I was in from '99 to '06, part of the invasion force in Iraq in '03, and after that, I was a union boilermaker, and then went back to school, and have been working veteran claims ever since. And came to VA Claims Insiders as a client, and then a coach, and then now here I am. It's been a great trip, and there's nothing better than waking up to serve veterans every day. Every day I get to do this is a blessing.
I hear you. I enjoy it. I enjoy it as well. It's never a day of work, is it?
Never.
Right. So just a little bit about me. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I served during the first Gulf War. After I got out of the Marine Corps, I actually went to college and became a teacher. I was a high school history teacher, and I also coached several sports: football, baseball, softball, girls softball. I did a little girls softball, wrestling, track, hockey, you name it. Left teaching, and I went to work for the VA. So I've actually been working with veterans for over 14 years. The 11 years I worked for the VA, 6.5 that I was a rating specialist. So came to VACI, and it's been, it's just been an awesome time ever since, working with veterans, getting to know veterans. That's one thing that the VA doesn't really have. You don't really get to have that one-on-one personal time with veterans. So it's always awesome. Looking in the chat, looks like we've got quite a few Navy veterans.
D-Mac, you've got a son in the Corps now too, don't you?
I do. Yes, I do. He's actually in New River. Is it North Carolina, South Carolina? Just outside Cherry Point. But yeah, I do. He's an airframe mechanic on the Osprey, so he's enjoying life as a Marine. We got a lot of Army veterans in here. Juan Varela, U.S. Army, retired, 25 years, active duty. Thank you for your service, Juan. Navy, we got some Navy in here. Carol Semplis. And if I'm butchering last names, I do apologize. All right. M. Steele from Savannah, Georgia. I've been to Savannah, Georgia. Beautiful place. Army, 1980 to 83.
Valerie Cortazo, 28 years. Wow. It's a long time.
All my Marine brothers and sisters out there, Semper Fi, welcome to the show.
Roberta Young, another 28 years.
Got a lot of experience in the chat right now.
Seriously. Wow. Thank you all. Thank you all for everything you've done.
Absolutely. Wow. David, U.S. Navy, 84 to 94. California National Guard, 94 to 03. Blythe, California. I'm very familiar with Blythe. I actually lived in Yuma, Arizona for about 18 years. So very familiar with Blythe. Clint Bradley, Marine Corps, Desert Storm.
Teresa Curry. Good afternoon. I'm in Donata something. Yeah, I can't even do that one. Florida. Spent 10 years in the Air Force. That is a hard name to say. Thonotosasa? I don't know.
10 years in the Air Force. Wow. I'd like to extend a very special welcome to all of our Vietnam veterans that we have currently in this Facebook Live. Welcome home. I know you guys didn't get the welcome home that you deserved, but welcome home. Happy to have you with us today. Pensacola, Florida. Robert Brooks, Navy veteran, 77 to 97, a solid 20 years. Right, like
area, Florida. I was down there for EOD school. I love that area.
Yeah, my boy was at NAS Pensacola with when he was going to his A school. Never got to go. Jen got to go. Jen went down there and visited, but I didn't get to go.
Vietnam, a lot of Vietnam vets today. DMAC was saying it always feels good getting wins for the Vietnam guys because they did not get that same exchange when they got back.
They did not. All right.
Marty Tate retired July 2022, still under review. Ooh, you just got out, buddy. Thank you for your service.
Yeah. That's one of the hardest things for veterans also is that adjustment from civilian life from military life to civilian life. So congratulations on your retirement, Marty. And, you're in the right place. Like-minded veterans going through some of the same stuff that you're going through. If you're not going through it currently, you may be going through it in the future. So, which brings us to our topic for today. We are going to talk about the VA Claims Insider, the Golden Circle. What does it take to win your claim? All right. Before we start, though, I have to read this disclaimer, or I'm going to read this disclaimer. We are not accredited agents, VSOs, attorneys, or any other entity recognized by the Department of Veterans Affairs, and we are not affiliated with the VA in any way. VA Claims Insider is an education-based coaching consulting company for disabled veterans exploring eligibility for increased VA disability benefits and who wish to learn more about that process. VA Claims Insider also connects veterans with vetted, independent medical professionals in our referral network for medical examinations and independent medical opinions, also known as IMOs, for a wide variety or a wide range of disability conditions. All right. So, Donnie, you want to tell us a little bit about the SEM method, the strategy, education, medical evidence?
Absolutely. So, what we really want to do here at VA Claims Insiders is take a very complex and difficult system to navigate and make it simple, right? Keep it simple. And we do that by our SEM method: strategy, education, and medical evidence. Claims are won and lost with medical evidence. So what happens in the elite program, you get signed up and you're assigned a coach and you go into our proprietary insider portal and complete these tasks. You upload your documents. Coach reviews your documents and you sit down with your coach and you develop a strategy. The strategy is how you're going to get to the rating that you morally, ethically, and legally deserve, right? So that strategy is based on known secondary service connections, what you have that might be able to be connected directly to service or secondary to another disability, something like that. And you set up the order in which you're going to go through this process and the method that you're going to use to achieve those. And secondarily, which is extremely important, is the education piece, right? We want to educate you, the client, on what you're going to be rated on, the necessary things to establish service connection, all of that, right? So you have to go through this process. There's no substitute for that. No one can attend a CNP exam for you. Nobody can do these things for you. So you have to get the education that you need to get the rating that you deserve. I could sit here and we could speak every day for a year straight for 8 hours a day, and I would never know your story like you know your story. So what we need to do is educate you so that you are able to represent yourself the best way you can. And then we identify any pieces of medical evidence that's necessary to establish service connection and or ascertain the severity of your symptoms in accordance with 38 CFR so that you can get the rating you deserve after you get the service connection. And that's it, the strategy, education, and medical evidence. You can hear more about that from a discovery call. We have people willing to tell you about our program. You call in, get a chat with one of our people who can tell you all about the program. And that's what they're there to do, explain this to you and let you decide if this is the right program for you or not. But that SIM method is key in our process.
Right on. Thank you for that, Donnie. And one of the things you do get is you get that one-on-one coaching, right? You get the experience of coaches like myself and you You get that experience. You get that strategy session. The coach will look over your information, find the best path for you to go. You'll get that coaching with the claim submission, and then you'll also get that CMP prep. The most important day in the whole claims process is that CMP exam, so you'll get that as well. But you don't know if you don't know what you don't know, right? Famous line thrown around here quite a bit. So if you get if you're not already a client, if you're not already a veteran that signed up with us, make sure you do the discovery call, get hooked up with a coach, and go over your stuff. Okay. Now we do offer this Facebook Live, but we also offer a lot of educational materials. We got Zoom classes 3 times a day. We've got coffee with the coaches every morning. We've got the mental health exam prep. We got the medical exam prep. So we've got a lot going on here at the company. But today we're going to talk specifically about what you need to win your claim. The VA does have certain criteria, and they do have certain expectations that you have to meet in order to even qualify for benefits to start with. And one of those qualifications is you have to be a veteran, and you have to have been discharged with a good discharge. Now, Donnie, can you explain a little bit what a good discharge is?
Yeah. And to be clear, you don't have to you can have a general discharge. And things like that. You just can't have a bad conduct discharge, right? And some people get worried about that. They say, well, I was general, but really what it is you can't have a bad conduct. You can't have been court-martialed. You can't have been dishonorably discharged, things like that. If you got it on good terms for the most part, then you're going to qualify for benefits.
Right. The 3 big ones are that disqualify you from benefits are the big chicken dinner, as we call it, or the bad conduct discharge, the dishonorable discharge, and the other than honorable discharge. Those 3 right there are pretty much a bar to benefits. And you'll have to go in and either get that upgraded, that discharge upgraded, or you just won't get benefits. Okay. So make sure if you're signing up, have that good discharge, get with a coach, start moving forward. But the VA also requires that you have what's called it's called the Calusa Triangle, and the Calusa Triangle consists of an event in service, right? So you had to have some kind of an accident, injury, illness while you were in service. You have to have a current complaint diagnosis, and then you have to have a nexus or a linking those together. There are other ways of doing it through secondary conditions. And I don't know, Donnie, you want to touch on secondary conditions a little bit, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So a secondary condition is when you have a disability that is caused or made worse by an already service-connected condition. For example, if you have a post-traumatic stress disorder and you have to take a bunch of pills for those, and maybe they make your indigestion really bad, or your bowel process is irregular, then that's grounds for service connection. Or maybe you have tinnitus, and when tinnitus is really bad, it aggravates your migraines, and so that's grounds for service connection. And as Daryl was saying, there's 3 elements, right? The in-service event or stressor, the current diagnosis, and the nexus. So a nexus is usually the last thing you establish in most cases, because you have to have the current diagnosis and the in-service event. And I always explain nexus is like the bridge that bridges those 2 things. It connects them. And that's what nexus means. It's a fancy term for connection. But you have to have that first thing service connected, and then you have to get a current diagnosis for the second condition. And then the nexus is the evidence that bridges those 2. And oftentimes that comes in the form of a nexus letter, and that's the great thing about the elite program. And you get connected with vetted medical professionals in our network that are able to look and, when warranted, help you navigate that system.
Absolutely. So I get asked a lot of questions, especially being a former Raider. Well, how do I establish an event in service? The way you establish that event in service is clearly and by going to sick call. When you get hurt in service, and I know a lot of people are going to say, well, we were discouraged from going to sick call, which is true. Called names, whatever, for going to sick call. But the main way to get things service connected is on a direct basis, and that is having an event that was actually registered in your service treatment records or in your medical file through service, that you were seen for this condition while in service. All right. And I'll use the example of a back condition because that seems to be a lot of what's out there. So you were seen for a back condition while in service. You were out on a 30-mile hump, and your rucksack weighed 60 pounds and you want to hurt your back. Okay. So now years later, you're having a back condition again. Your back never got better from in service, and now you're having a back condition again. So what you need to do is you need to try to draw that link between your current back condition and your back condition in service, and that's done through that Nexus letter. Because a lot of veterans don't go to sick call while they're in service, that's when we start looking at secondary things, right? So that Nexus is the important piece. That's that missing piece of the puzzle. And yeah, we do have vetted medical professionals that will help if there is a connection there, help write that connection. Right. I get asked a lot of questions also about, and I'm just going to cover sleep apnea real quick. And I want everybody to keep in mind that just because you're going to the VA and being seen for a condition, remember, you still have to meet the 3 criteria of the Kaluza Triangle, right? So sorry, my dog. So if you have if you're diagnosed with sleep apnea through the VA, yeah, the VA diagnosed you with it, but what was the event in service that you're linking it to? So keep that in mind. You have to have those 3 things. Now the
DMAC, I always compare it to, people often think that just because the VA diagnosed you that means it should be able to be service connected. Right. But I got out in 2006, and if I walk outside and kick my couch because I'm mad at my dog and break my toe and go to the VA and they diagnose me with a broken toe, that doesn't mean that I can service connect it. I just kicked the couch. So we still have those obligations you're talking about, the Nexus and the in-service event.
Right. So Brian Reese and VACI have added an extra part to that Kaluza Triangle, and we actually call it the Golden Circle. The last part of that Golden Circle you need, and it makes total sense, you need to have the severity of the symptoms in terms of frequency, severity, and duration, right? So, having that condition, but being able to speak to that condition is also very important in the whole circle. And if any one of the first 3 parts are missing, the 4th part is I'm not going to say it's irrelevant, but it's very important that you're able to explain that. So could you go over a little bit on the severity of symptoms in terms of frequency?
Yeah. So, and this is where the education portion of our strategy, education, and medical evidence comes really, it's really important because, not all conditions are rated the same. And sometimes, severity and frequency, like not all of those terms apply. So, as you discussed, the back condition, under certain rating codes, it's simply how far you bend and flex. And that's it. And it's important to know that because a lot of times clients will say, well, but I just, I've just went through this therapy, or I've had all these things and they gave me all these pills. But if that's not how it's rated, then that's not the important piece to express. Now, getting treatment's important, and showing that continuity of care and that it is a problem. However, expressing that isn't the important thing to express, right? So, for example, with headaches, frequency and severity is important because frequency, if you're having an average of one headache, one prostrating headache, which goes to the severity piece, then that's what's important. They're looking at prostrating, does it make you lay down, and frequency, how often, an average of once a month, and knowing that, you're able to express that information. If you don't know that and you go in and you're like, well, but I have 9 different pills for migraines I'm taking, and that's your focus because you think that's the important thing, then you're not educated on the process and you're not going to express your symptoms in the way in which you're going to get adequately rated.
So expression of those symptoms is very important. And on top of that, not just being able to express those symptoms, but if you don't have any current treatment for that condition, getting your butt to the doctor, very important to get that documentation as well. So if you don't have any current treatment for a condition, that's the best way to establish that severity, right? Is by going to the doctor. And I like what you said, Donnie, about certain conditions being based on other things. You know, most musculoskeletal conditions are based on, number one, painful motion. Now, a painful motion is going to get you 10% probably tops. All right. So yeah, then everything else is based on range of motion. Any kind of joint, knee, back, hips, shoulders, elbows, they're all based on range of motion. So if you've got that 10% for the painful motion already, establish that loss of range of motion. That's important. And you do that by getting yourself to the doctor, right? So make sure you get yourself to the doctor and get seen for that stuff. Frequency, severity, that's all. It's all things that you need to be able to speak to. And if you sign up for a free that 30-minute discovery call, and you don't think, or you're not sure if you have a condition, then do that 30 minutes call and talk with somebody. They can help you walk through it, which is definitely something we provide here too. One of the most important things when you're talking about all of this and service connection is knowing the severity of your symptoms, right? Know your symptoms. I don't know your symptoms. Donnie doesn't know your symptoms. You need to know your symptoms, and need to be able to speak to those symptoms. Okay. No matter how difficult it may be. Okay.
And that's where that education piece comes in really important, right? And those classes you were talking about earlier, you know,
right.
So, and when you sign up for our elite program, you don't get just your coach, you get a team, and you have all these classes, which have a variety of coaches teaching these classes, and you get the community. You have a network of other veterans who are in these classes asking questions, who've been around for a while. They're asking questions you haven't even thought of yet. And when you get our team of coaches, we're all here working together. Right? You know, Daryl answers questions for other coaches all the time. I answer questions for other coaches all the time. I ask Daryl questions, you know. Daryl's probably forgotten more about the VA than I've ever known. I mean, and we're all one big team. We share this as a community, this knowledge, and we put it forward. But the only way you get that is, you know, sign up for the coach, the elite program, get in there, get your education so you can get your symptoms. You know the education behind your symptoms. I think we have that's a separate link than the other one. So whichever one you think would be a good fit for you, get some information or get signed up.
Yeah, and get access to all those classes, and get access to the Facebook and all that stuff that we offer. Quoted, it was once said that our free stuff is better than most people's paid stuff, right? Our free education is better than most people's paid education, but we'll leave it at that. Now, let's go back a little bit here. Let's talk about events and service, okay? Because there's important aspects that people need to know when they're talking about events and service. All right, number one, if you have an event in service, and that event in service resolves itself while you're in service, it's considered resolved. So you're kind of drawing a blank there as far as getting that service connected, right? So once the VA says it's resolved, or once your doctor says it's resolved, that means that that's no longer there. All right. Another thing to consider would be presumptive conditions. All right. And I know with the PACT Act out, presumptive conditions are huge right now. All right. Burn pit, Agent Orange exposure, 38 CFR 3.309 covers a lot of presumptive condition, presumptive of service, presumptive of burn pits, presumptive of contaminated water. So with that, the only thing you need to have as far as a presumptive condition goes, as long as you're within the time limit given, is that DD-214 showing that you were in that location. That is your nexus. That is your link, right? So with the contaminated water, let's go back. Let's say with burn pits, you have the Southwest Asia Service Medal that place. So now all you need to have is that current condition, that presumptive condition. right? So that still meets the needs of the Kaluza triangle. And then adding that fourth piece in there, you need to speak to the severity of those symptoms. Right, Donnie?
Yeah, and what DMAC means by you have to have that condition, he means you need a diagnosis. I see a lot of times veterans say, well, I have that condition. Well, you have to go to the doctor. You have to get diagnosed for the condition. You need that medical evidence, right? Strategy, education, medical evidence. You have to get that diagnosis to meet that requirement. Just saying you have the condition oftentimes is not enough.
No, you do have to have that diagnosis. That's absolutely right. And with that, exposure in and of itself is not a disability. So, if you're a Vietnam veteran and you were in, you were in Da Nang, you were exposed to Agent Orange, right? But being exposed isn't enough. You actually have to have one of those conditions. Same way with contaminated water in Lejeune. Same way with burn pits. Same way with Gulf War syndrome. You actually have to have a condition diagnosed in order to get it to work. And that is something you can talk to a coach about here. Okay. So we've talked about in-service events. We've talked about the nexus, the linking it together. We've talked about secondary conditions. Secondary conditions can be linked to your primary condition. It still requires that Kaluza triangle. You still have to have that linking it together. And then we talked about severity of symptoms and being able to speak to the severity of your symptoms. Those are the four main things that are going to help you with service connection. They're going to push you in that right direction. If you're missing any one of those four things, give us a call. Give us a call. We can absolutely help out. You can talk to one of our coaches and they can point you in the right direction. Okay. I did see a question in there earlier about Nexus letters. The VA doctors will not write Nexus letters for veterans. Nexus letters are, they consider it what do they call it? They consider it
conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. That's it. Yeah. So they won't do it. So you can go to your VA doctor and they can diagnose you with something, and they can even verbally tell you, yeah, I'm sure that's related to service, but they will not write that Nexus letter for you because they consider it a conflict of interest. So go ahead.
To piggyback on that, even a lot of primary care doctors that are outside the VA, maybe they'll try to write them, but what they really write is a Nexus statement. And that doesn't have a lot of weight to it, not a lot of probative value, right? So if I say Daryl owes me money, from an argumentative standpoint, that stands true until Daryl says, no, I do not. So if all you get is a statement saying it's at least as likely as not that this condition is related to that condition or this condition is related to that service, that's only as good as that statement until someone else says, no, you don't. But as soon as the counter argument comes in, it is not related because of this and that and another. Now that has weight because there's a rationale behind it. And most doctors don't give you that rationale. Now, when you get set up with a professional who is good at writing those, who knows what they're doing, then they tie in how your specific situation and your records and your service relate to that condition and how that condition relates to another. And then they cite peer-reviewed research and former VA case decisions and tie that all together in a rationale that carries weight. So now it's not just this is related to that, and I'm a doctor, take my word for it. It's actually a rationale, a solid argument that then the VA has to counter if they're going to deny you. So it's a much different position to be in.
Right, and it's using that terminology that the VA is familiar with, which most doctors aren't really familiar with that stuff. Especially like the least as likely as not, less likely than not, and more likely than not. They're not really trained in writing that way. It's legalese, the way it's written. So we did cover all four aspects. If you're missing one of those, like I said, come contact us, get a hold of us. We can look through your stuff. We can look through your information, potentially get you over to one of the providers in our referral network and get that missing link. Also get your butt to the doctor. That's one of the most important things is get your butt to the doctor. You could have had an event in service, a back injury in service. But a lot of times the VA is looking for continuity of care now. You're out of service. Are you still being seen for your back? Are you still going to the doctor for your back? They'll look at that kind of stuff. Is there medical evidence to support? And that's the whole thing. I mean, I know a lot of people have a lot of bad experiences with the VA, but realistically, if you follow that Kaluza triangle, you follow that golden circle, you submit that evidence, it gives the VA a really difficult time arguing with you and saying no when you've given them everything that they request, they ask for, and they've got it. So let's go ahead and turn to some of the questions in the chat. Tony Espinosa, if I submit DBQs from Telemedic for an increase, will there be a C&P exam, or will they just grant my increase based on my DBQ? All right. For those of you who don't know what a DBQ is a disability benefits questionnaire. It's the form that when you go for a compensation and pension examination, it's the form that the doctor fills out and then turns back over to the VA. A few years back, there were some public-facing DBQs. The VA went in and kind of took those away, and now they're back again. So if you have a DBQ, disability benefits questionnaire, submitted by a credible doctor, the VA is supposed to forego any type of C&P examination. They do have the ability to rate straight off that DBQ. All right. So my advice would be to get a DBQ if you have the access to that. Get a DBQ, submit that as part of your credible medical evidence. And technically, if the VA gives you an examination, it's actually considered overdevelopment. But in some cases, when there's questions on a DBQ, the VA will still set you up with a C&P examination. Pretty rare, but it does happen.
How long can you be out and file a claim? Well, Rodney, there is no end. There's no cap on how long you can file a claim. We have lots of Vietnam era veterans that come in, and we take care of them. They get to the system, and they get their rating they more or less legally deserve. It's too late when you quit. You know, you have to get in here. You have to do it. You have to get in the fight. As long as you're willing to do that, it's never too late.
I did speak to presumptive conditions earlier, just kind of piggyback on that, Donnie. There were some presumptive conditions that do have time limits on them. For example, the burn pit, sinusitis, rhinitis, asthma. But anything outside of that 10-year period that they give for that, you can still be diagnosed with the condition. You'll just have to get a nexus. Whereas if you're in that 10-year period, you don't need a nexus. But like Donnie said, there is no time limit on a disability. Jerry Sullivan, question: after you receive percentage, how long do you have before the VA can reduce your percentage? So typically what happens when you're given a percentage, anything that's like 10%, the VA will not touch. They won't go back in and look at it and say, no, we're going to take that away. Usually it's certain conditions, and I'll give you an example: PTSD, GERD, migraines. Those are the three biggest ones. If somewhere along the line somebody says that with treatment or with medication your condition could potentially get better, or if you say, I've been taking this medication and I think I'm getting better, the VA will do what's called a routine future exam. Usually they set those for 5 years out. Okay, so if you're not considered, if you're at 100%, you're not permanent total, you're just 100% scheduler, probably because you have a routine future exam. Those are 5 years. The VA, I was still rating at the time, but they changed it so they're 5 years out. The only exception to that are cancers. So cancers are usually 6 months. Prostate cancer, any kind of cancer, because with treatment, specifically like prostate cancer, if you have treatment or prostatectomy or removal of the prostate, then they have to rate off the residuals. So cancers are a little different. They're usually 6 months, but other than that, everything else is usually 5 years out.
And temporary 100s, those are set up to be reevaluated pretty soon too.
Yeah. That's a good point. Total knee replacement. Yeah.
Yeah. Is a migraine log necessary for a 50% rating, or can I get 50% with just my DBQs reflecting multiple prostrating migraines a month? So, Tonio, the rating for migraines has changed. It's no longer just multiple prostrating migraines per month. It's it says you have to have a lot of them. But the new added language is severe economic inadaptability. That means it has to hurt your wallet in some capacity. So, however, you can reflect that it's causing it's impairing your ability to work, and would add value to that claim and make it more likely that you would get a 50% rating. Now, it doesn't define that anywhere that I've seen or heard, and it leaves it pretty vague. And realistically, maybe for some people that means instead of 50 grand a year, you make 25 grand a year. Instead of $1 million a year, you only make $500,000 a year. Like there's no actual definition. It just says severe economic inadaptability. And that's that new language in the rating criteria that really leaves it open to subjective analysis. What are your thoughts on that, Daryl?
Yeah, I usually explain it as if you have to call in sick because you have a headache, if you have to come into work late, or you have to leave early because you have a headache. But once again, we go back to the golden circle, right? Being able to talk to the severity of those symptoms. And you don't want to talk about your symptoms on your best day. Talk about your symptoms on your worst day. So as part of that tracking, I would always ask veterans to track how many days they have to take off of work, or how many days they have to call in sick, or how many times they have to leave early. And that way, because you're right, Donnie, there is no set definition of economic inadaptability, right? So it's up to the discretion of the examiner essentially at that point. So documentation, I took 4 days off last week because I had a severe migraine. Usually takes 4 days for it to go away, and this happens once a month over several months. That's just being able to speak to the severity of those symptoms. All right. If we answer your question, but it doesn't get right to the point, or it doesn't get to what you're actually asking, just slip another comment in. All right. And we'll get to it. Jeff, I'm at 0% for asthma, but I've been using an inhaler since deployment. Does using an inhaler get me 30%? So first off, asthma is rated under 6602, bronchial asthma. And it's based on the frequency. All right. So, the 10% rating is you have an inhaler. You've been prescribed an inhaler or some kind of bronchiotherapy. Okay. It's really based off of your FEV. And that is, what is FEV? Let me look it up real quick. Sorry.
It's the blow test, right?
Yeah, it is. That's basically what it is. So, it's based on how hard you can blow into that little device, right?
Yeah.
So having an inhaler, and they should test with or without the inhaler, with a bronchodilator, with the inhaler, or without it. So it's really it all based on severity. So being able to speak to the severity and how often you have to use that inhaler. 10% is intermittent, 30% is daily. So if you have to use it daily, just being able to speak to the severity of those symptoms, that's what's going to take you from that 0 to potentially that 30 or 10%. Okay.
DMAC, this is a good example of that strategy piece and the strategy, education, medical evidence. If you sign up for a coach, they're going to walk through this with you and identify if this is the increase you should be going for, or if you have something else out there that maybe is a much more substantial increase, and where in line that claim should fall in your strategy, and help you piece that all together. So if you want to go over that with a coach, there's the link right there. It's really a key portion of getting the rating that you morally, ethically, and legally deserve.
Yeah, and very, very few people realize that it takes 27 10% to equal 100% service connection. So, if you wanna dime them to death, that's totally your call. But my guess is that a 30% can be a high value claim, but going for those bigger claims first, that's where that coaching comes in and that education comes into play for sure. And by the way, while we're talking about education and coaching, Brian's got a new book coming out. It's the You Deserve It, second edition, and it's going to drop in April 11th of this year. So, kind of while we have a little break here, and that just happened to come up, you can get yourself a copy of that book, April 11th. You Deserve It, second edition. All right.
And to piggyback off of what you were saying earlier, Daryl, the 27 10%, right? 27 claims. Let's say that you file 2 at a time and get those servers connected, and you have an average adjudication time of 3 months, right? So we're still looking at years. If you're lucky and none of those were denied, whatever.
Right.
The way VA math works is once you have a percentage, like say you get a 70% rating, then you're considered 30% healthy, right? So you have 70, they subtract 70 from the 100, you have 30 left over. So then you get another 50% rating. So you're at 2 claims. 50% of that 30 is 15. Add the 15 to the 70, you're at 85. You get paid at 90. You get another 50% claim, you're still only at 92.5, right? So now you're 3 claims in, 90.5. But now here the difference is you get one more claim at 30%, you're at 100%. 4 claims as opposed to 27 claims to get to 100%. And that's really the importance of that strategy. And if those are each filed one at a time, three months apiece, you're looking at 12 months as opposed to years and years.
Right. And I did mine in 16 years because there wasn't a company like this. But man, I sure wish there would have been, because it would have been a lot quicker.
Absolutely. I think the number one complaint I hear is why didn't I come here earlier?
Yeah. Yep. I have a C&P hearing Thursday for shoulder. Do you have any tips for this that I should know? Honestly, C&P examinations are just being able to speak to the severity of your symptoms. In all honesty, that's 100% what they're all about. That's the best advice I can give you right now. Severity of your symptoms, talk about them. Range of motion. How far can you lift your arm up from your shoulder or from your leg up? That's, and on that, and not saying, Travis, by any means that you would, but be honest when you're going for your examination, right? Be honest. The doctors know when you're malingering. They know when you're not telling the truth. So be honest. Best way to handle an examination. You know your symptoms, Travis. I don't know your symptoms. Nobody knows your symptoms like you do. So be able to speak to them. Okay.
And be vulnerable too. A lot of times veterans aren't honest because they're not talking about how bad it really is. That's where the dishonesty comes in. For instance, you have a back problem and maybe it causes some nerve damage in your back, and it makes you pee your pants a little bit every now and then because you don't have that control you would have. No man wants to admit that. No person wants to admit that. But so you don't go in there and you don't say that, and you don't talk about all the little things that are associated with that disability. And all you're doing is lowering the chances that you're going to get the rating that you deserve.
Yeah, it's not the time to be a warrior, right? We're all taught to be warriors when we're in the military. Stomach everything, swallow everything down, don't let your feelings, your emotions show. C&P exam is not the time to do that. That's the time to let those feelings out. Let everything be known. Be uncomfortably vulnerable. Absolutely. Mark Nichols. Medically board retired in 1990. In 2018, one of the conditions was lowered. Isn't there a time period where the rating becomes protective? So yes, they have a 10-year rule and they have a 20-year rule. Okay. The 10-year rule, at the 10-year rule, they can reduce you down to 0, but they cannot take away your disability. The 20-year rule, they cannot reduce or take away your disability. So once you hit 20 years with that disability, they cannot reduce it and they cannot take it away. Anything up to that point, they can reduce it. At 10 years, they can't take it away. They can only reduce it. Anything before 10 years, they can take it away. Unless the caveat to all of that is if they find it a fraudulent claim at any point, they can remove it. Even after 20 years, if it's fraudulent, they can remove it.
So a nuance to that most people don't realize is, so say you got service connected in 1990, and then in 2000 or 2001, you got an increase to a new rating. And then 2018, you got reduced back to the old rating. So you have to hold that rating for 20 years. Isn't that right, Daryl?
Yes.
If you have the new rating, then it starts that 20-year period over.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and take David's question too, because sleep apnea is my forte. Can sleep apnea be connected to in-service back injury disability rating? 60%. Honestly, not likely. Your best choice or your best option for doing any kind of sleep apnea, if you weren't diagnosed with sleep apnea in service, sleep apnea is the number one denied claim by the VA currently. Okay, because everybody wants to claim it, right? So with sleep apnea, we've had a lot of luck linking it to respiratory condition, sinusitis, rhinitis, and even asthma, and sleep apnea. The symptoms kind of overlap each other, so you could only be service connected for one of those conditions. But if you have a 10% asthma, why not go for the 50% sleep apnea, right? So linking it to a respiratory condition, we've had a lot of luck. GERD, linking it as secondary to GERD, we've had a lot of luck. GERD it chews away at that soft palate, which can cause breathing issues and therefore cause other respiratory conditions, sleep apnea. Mental health, not so much. It can be successful, but it's a fight. You really got to fight it. It usually takes a few times and going back to the VA before they'll accept it. So, a back injury, as of right now, the VA does not recognize obesity or being overweight as a disability. Most of the time, if you tell them I can't exercise because I have a bad back, so I put on weight, they'll say that exercise alone is not the only remedy to not being overweight. Caloric intake is another way that you can control weight gain. So they've been denying those a lot based on caloric intake. Okay.
When you sign up for our elite program, you get a coach and you develop that strategy. One of the things that the coach evaluates is the probability of success. So they're not going to set you up to go after these far-fetched claims or low likelihood of success, things like that, because the goal is to win and get the rating you deserve. So this is the highest probability of success. This is the route you should go.
Right. And you know what? When you do sign up, not only do you get a coach assigned to you, you get access. We've talked on some of our resources that we have, but there's literally a plethora of resources. We've got TikTok, we've got Facebook Mastermind Group, Lend Hero. If you're thinking about buying a home, we've got that. Military Disability Made Easy, a partner company. Help you simplify down that 38 CFR Part 4 into layman's terms, right? Because not everybody has the time to sit around and just learn the 38 CFR Part 4. We've got Instagram, we've got Facebook Lives, there's all kinds of things that this company offers. So if you're not a member currently, get on over, do your discovery call if you need to. Get signed up, get with a coach, and get moving on that VA disability. There is no time limit on it, but why wait, right? Why wait when you have a company like this that can help you out with that process, can coach you and give you all the resources to educate you on that VA claims process, right? Mark Nichols was in the artillery 8 years, have hearing loss and tinnitus, filed a claim and was deemed to have hearing loss and VA provided hearing aids, but was denied service connection. Hearing loss is a funny beast. Even if you do get service connected at hearing loss, typically it's a 0% rating. Okay. Artillery, that's a tough one. So I'm just going to share a little of my story. So I worked on ground air missiles. I worked for Hawk Missile Systems. I worked on ground air missiles and live fires all the time, right? I was on launcher row. I was around the launchers. We had a live fire. I've claimed tinnitus and been denied tinnitus several times. So I no longer claim it, but I was denied tinnitus several times. So I don't know why the VA would. I mean, I would have to take a look at your hearing examinations in order to determine. My guess is that you were within normal limits at the time. Keep in mind, just because the VA issues something to you or diagnoses you with something, you still have to meet those four things for service connection. Okay, so at the time that you took your test, you might have been within normal limits for hearing loss for the VA. Then that's where that coach comes in, because the coach can actually look at what records you provide and not diagnose, but kind of dive into those records and give you the path of least resistance and the path that's going to get you to where you want to be. Unfortunately, hearing loss is typically 0%, so that's not typically a path that you want to just run down, right? By itself anyway.
Real quick, Ken Wyatt said, well, I mean, if you'll help vets from South Alabama, you help vets all over the world. I've had clients in Guam, South Korea, Ukraine, Germany, all over the place. Wherever vets go, we help them.
Oh, yeah. South Alabama? Heck yeah. You know, every time I hear the word Alabama, it just takes me back to Forrest Gump. She's going back to Greenbow, Alabama.
When I hear South Alabama, it reminds me of the Panhandle of Florida. We called it South Alabama.
Yeah.
Like, this is South Alabama.
So even if I can prove an in-service injury, this is Judith, can prove I needed treatment even after I got out of the Navy and get the DBQs in the Nexus letter. If my Navy doctor, physical therapist declared it resolved, then I'm SOL. I'm not going to say totally, but that's where a coach can come in. I honestly, I can't answer that without looking at the records. If you had a condition while you're in service, typically if you have a condition while you're in service and that condition resolves itself while you're in service, and then you have problems with that condition later on, the VA is more than likely going to try to link that condition to something else in your life. Because your doctor said that condition resolved while you're in service. But Judith, if you're not a member already, I would suggest you sign up, get yourself a coach, get those records over to them, let them review them and see what they can do, right? See where that can go. All right. I am overall 100% permanent and total disability. Can the VA reduce that? Not everything with the VA is 100%, right? But if you're 100% permanent total and you don't ever file another claim again, you don't ever do anything as far as filing a claim again, the VA has no need or want or desire to pull your records, to look at them. Okay. And this is coming from a former rating specialist. As a rating specialist working for the VA, I didn't have time to just go randomly pull people's records, right? Because there are hundreds of thousands of veterans out there that are filing claims. So I didn't have just randomly go and pull somebody's records. Now, if you're seeking treatment for those conditions and you're going to the VA to seek treatment for those conditions, there is a possibility that condition can improve. And if it does improve, then it really is your duty and your as an honorable person to report that condition has improved. Okay. But as far as the VA just going in and randomly pulling claims, they don't do that. All right, we got about 7 more minutes. I'm already 50% for mental health, but during my CMP exam it opened up, I had PTSD for MST. Should I put in a claim for that too? All right. So with mental health, you can only be service connected for one mental health condition at a time. And once you're already service connected for that condition, the diagnosis is really irrelevant. Okay. All mental health examinations are all mental health conditions are rated using the same criteria. All right. And if they try to do 2 conditions, that's called pyramiding. And it's against the rules as far as the VA goes. So if you're diagnosed with, if you're service connected for depression at 50% and they come back a week later and they say, nope, you've got PTSD, it's irrelevant. If they come back a week after that and say you have Chevy Silverado, it's irrelevant. It's all rated the same way. So filing a new claim on top of that, really what you're going to want to do is just file for an increase on the 50%, being able to speak to the severity of your symptoms.
And on top of that, as Daryl said, the severity of symptoms it's the current severity. A lot of people they want to go in and talk about things that happened in 1972 on an increase, and the increase really they evaluate the period from your last CNP exam till present day, and it's what is wrong with you in present day. What are your symptoms now that's going to affect your rating?
Right. Which brings us to the CNP examination in itself. So the VA does know that some examiners don't do an adequate job of giving examinations. Okay. And they don't do it all the time. It's just sometimes it's something that's overlooked. So if you ever feel like you got a bad CNP exam, there are some paths you can take in order to make sure that that's documented. Number one is a memorandum of record. But once again, signing up with a coach here at VACI, they can help walk you through that process or coach you and educate you in that process of what you do when you get a bad CNP exam. They do happen, unfortunately. How do you report it? Who do I tell? How do I talk about it? The important thing with that is to make sure you do that memorandum of record before they make a decision. They make a decision on the claim and you complain about it afterwards. It just looks like you're complaining. So, memorandum of record beforehand. Try to get through as many questions as we can. We got a lot of questions in here. Hey guys, 90% rated. I have been seeing a psychiatrist for 2 years at the VA. I have not put in a depression claim. Could I get to 100% with a claim filed? 90%, anything's possible. I can't, like I said, I don't know your specific situation. I don't know your specific claims that you have in. That's where having that coach comes into play. Right.
Yeah, there's so many variables there that we just don't have the information for. Do you already have a mental health condition service connected or no? What is that rating on that one? It's. I mean, could I? Yes, because you can get to 100% on mental health alone. So it is possible, but the probability is hard to determine without having a lot more information.
Yeah. Were you previously denied for mental health? What did that look like? All kinds of variables there. All right. This is Sarah Blanks. I have 50% on migraines, and I heard that my vertigo and arthritis that's in my neck due to migraines can be claimed as a resulting disability and I can get compensation for that. Is it true? Same deal. Yeah, it's possible. It is possible. It all depends on the severity of your symptoms, the diagnosis that you get, having that nexus linking your vertigo to your migraines. There's still a lot of variables there, and this is all and these are very good questions. Don't get me wrong, very good questions, but these are questions that somebody who has access to your information and has a conversation with you can determine a lot better than we can just on this Facebook Live. Okay.
I'm currently at 80% for 2 failed back surgeries and PTSD with 1 stay at VA mental ward. My doctor is telling me to be happy with what I have. Do I need to see another doc or just hang it up? So I had a VSO that told me I should be happy with 70%, and I had a whole bunch of stuff out there that was related to service, to include being medevac from Iraq and all kinds of stuff, and he told me just to be happy. And that was not good advice because I'm now 100% PNT. I would say you definitely need to get with a coach, you sign up for our elite program, and get a strategy together and go and get the rating that you morally, ethically, and legally deserve, brother.
Scott Mendoza, can you qualify for more than one issue under the PACT Act, burn pit, Agent Orange, etc.? Yes, absolutely, you can. Just keep in mind, though, that exposure in and of itself is not a disability. So if you served in Vietnam and you had that longevity of service and it put you in the Gulf, yeah, absolutely. Agent Orange, burn pit, both. Okay. If you have those conditions, if you have a condition that's service connectable, by all means, particulate matter. You worked on a flight line and you were around the foam that the firefighters used. Absolutely. You can qualify for more than one. You just have to have that diagnosis of more than one. Okay. And then be able to have the service to link it to the PACT Act or to those specific areas. All right. We're almost at the top of the hour, Donnie. It's been a pleasure working with you, teaching with you, educating with you.
You too, brother. Always.
Make sure that if you are not signed up, get on and do that discovery call. It costs nothing. It's free to do. Get on there, talk to somebody about your specific situation, get yourself a coach, get access to our resources, right? I wish I would have had access back in the day when I was doing mine. So until we see each other again in the hallways, it's been a pleasure. Everybody have a great day or not. The choice is yours.